Today we'll begin by discussing a few terms and ideas, and that is important before we proceed into the reading topics per se. So, as we already discussed, SAT Digital does not have two separate sections for English. It's one combined reading and writing section, but for effectiveness of teaching and practice, we have segregated that into two topics: reading and writing. So, the writing part would mostly consist of grammar topics, whereas the reading topics are based on two content domains in SAT Digital. One is information and ideas, and the other is craft and structure. So these question types would be dependent on a short passage of maximum 150 words. Okay. So now we'll go into the question types, but before that, it's crucial to understand these terms. So let's begin by addressing this question. What is an argument, according to you?
When there's a disagreement between people.
Okay. Is there any other meaning to the word argument?
um, Different views.
Okay. So what do we mean when we say presenting an argument? So what is that argument?
Like a statement
Yes. Is
or
it just
claim.
a statement, or are there specific characteristics to this? Okay, a claim. You said something, right? Okay, a claim. What else would an argument consist of?
um,
Can you
like
just claim
reasoning.
something?
Sorry.
Can you just make a claim and leave it at that, or do you have to give something else?
Reasoning behind it.
Okay, very good.
Or
Right. So you
like
need all the
examples.
examples. Good. So, does an argument, the term by itself, mean that what is said is true or correct?
No.
It can
No.
be, yes, it can hold true or it can not substantiate itself, right?
Yeah.
So there are different scenarios that you can have with an argument. So when you come to your reading questions, also you will find that there are certain passages that make some arguments, or there is some analysis of a literary work, or some scientific study that is being explained to you, and there you will find these elements as well. Okay, so first we are going into some terms, and we'll just clarify whether we are understanding these terms correctly. Okay, so the first term is fact. What is fact?
It is objectively true.
Yes, objectively true. What do you mean by objectively true?
It doesn't depend on different views. You can't have. It's not an opinion.
It's not
It's
an opinion.
just is the universal truth.
Okay, so it's something as it is, right? Yeah, without being
Yeah.
colored by subjective perspectives. Okay, so an opinion is subjective, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you draw the line between subjective and objective? If I suppose I say that, okay, I say I don't like flooding. Is that an opinion or an objective truth?
It's an opinion.
Okay. Suppose I say the flooding in my city is caused due to poor drainage. Is it an opinion or an objective truth?
It could
What do you
be an
call?
objective truth.
Can you call it a fact?
Um, if it's backed up by evidence, or if
What does it depend
it
on?
could be. Um,
What should I do to convert that? What did I say to you? I said I don't. I think the So I said the floods in my city, floods are caused due to poor drainage. So I'm asking you whether this is a fact or something else, right?
Yeah.
So now, what do I have to do to make this to prove this is true? What should I have?
Evidence.
Evidence. And I should show that the floods are caused due to poor drainage and not any other reason, right?
Yeah.
If it is, if there are other contributing reasons too, then I cannot simplistically state that poor drainage is the only cause for the floods. Correct?
Yeah.
So if I say, if there are say three reasons for the floods in my city, and I mention only this, is this completely correct?
No.
So it depends on a lot of things, right? So facts per se, we say that those are verified things. That is something that's just there. Okay, it's objectively true, like you said. But a definition is not generally considered a fact. It's explaining something in terms of something else, right? That's all. A definition. So that is not considered a fact per se. A theory is not a fact. We'll look into the difference between fact and theory later on. But do you have something to contribute there? Can you talk about what makes theory different from fact?
Um, Theory is, it's kind of just like guessing based on observations. So it might not be necessarily true, but it's the best explanation.
Okay, theory has to be proved true, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a fact isn't a definition. It isn't a theory. It is not an opinion. But sometimes problem is, in some cases, it's very clear it's an opinion, right? My opinion is, or
Yeah.
I think, what I feel. Then it's quite clear. But when these words are not there, we tend to think it's objective. Okay, that also happens. So that's why you should be careful about picking out opinions and facts and things like that. And also, a fact isn't the truth per se because for a fact there is no option that it's wrong, right? It's just correct.
Yeah.
But when you talk about truth, you should also consider the question of falsehood. Okay, so
Yeah.
generally we don't. Truth is a very tricky definition to make, right? And it's quite subjective, or you cannot really say something is true. Okay, it's a very problematic thing. The term. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But when we say something is true according to the passage, you mean it based on the passage, it's true. So for true, you always need a reference point, right? Based on the
Yeah.
study, is something true. Based on the graph, is this true? Okay. So always look at what you're referring to. It's not according to you. They're not asking the student according to you, is it true, right? So that's something to be careful. Okay. Now, a theory is a way of combining facts. It explains something, right? It explains the question of why or how something happens. Okay, so a fact is maybe a part of theory. Hmm? And theory, but like you said, it needs to be proved solidly using evidence, experiments, and so on. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now we'll go to the this. How is a fact different from an opinion?
Um, Fact is verified.
Hmm? Sorry,
A fact is verified.
verified. An opinion? It can be verified, right? I can verify if this opinion of Mahatma Gandhi. That would be a bit differentiating them, right? In one word, like if you can use one word there, like you used before, fact is something, whereas opinions are something else.
Objective and subjective.
Yes, that would be one way of. And a fact wouldn't vary, right?
Yeah.
Opinion, it depends on where you're looking from. Thing itself changes, right? But what happens is opinions are sometimes latched onto facts. So then you don't really see the difference between those things. Okay. So here you see that there's a huge thing, a huge part of block of facts or that constitutes the majority of this missile. Opinion is something tiny. So you wouldn't even spot it, but it's there all the same. That's how they trick you with the options. Sometimes it looks okay, factually correct, but then a part of it would be clearly an opinion, right?
Yeah.
Especially so when you spot extreme words, extreme things, it's the worst or it's the best, and things like that, and it's not supported by the data given, then you can say that there's an opinion present somewhere there, right? So since this is academic writing mostly, you would be looking at what can be verified and what can be proven. So this is what you should be worried about this. Now, what is a claim? Earlier you mentioned a claim.
Um, Someone just saying something. It
Kind of a statement,
might
right?
not be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if I say I was late because I was caught up in traffic, it's also a claim, right?
Yeah.
And this needs to be verified. Okay. Now, a claim in academic context, we can consider it either as a judgment, not as in people judging each other, not that kind of judgment. It's about making an evaluated decision, right? Or some judgment call. Okay, this is what should be done to improve the drainage in the city. Okay,
Yeah.
so that is a judgment, but then also it's a claim because you should support your judgment well, right? It needs to be supported and collaborated. So that is a judgment, and you need evidence to weigh, and you should consider so many sides of the same issue before you reach a conclusion. But a claim can be a judgment of that kind, okay, regarding a course of action, probably, or the cause of an issue. Some judgment call. Okay, it can also be an inference. So, what is an inference? It's not something that you merely find from what is given, but you also combine with what you know, right? So it's not it should be based on what evidence you have or what data you have, but you're combining that with some knowledge and critical reasoning to infer something. So that would be inference. Now, if you take the evidence, if you can do two kinds of things. Either you can use the evidence to make a prediction that is consistent with the earlier evidence. Okay, that is also supported by what is given. Right, you're observing it reasonably and making a reasonable prediction. You can also interpret the evidence that is given. So there is a huge load of data, and you make an interpretation. But then also these things need, you cannot just leave it at that. You should prove that it's supported by what is there before, or the interpretation you make is 100% supported by what is given. So all those are also claims. A claim also can be a point of view. So whenever you have a point of view that is arguable, right? This person looks at it from his point of view. He finds a 9, and this person finds a 6. So for this person, let's call him person A, and this is person B. So according to person A, it's true that it's 6, right? He doesn't doubt it for a moment. This person also can also think that it's 9. But when it's academic or a formal context, you should evaluate whether it is correct, right? So a point of view is an arguable position. But if that arguable in that arguable position, you are saying that okay, perhaps from that side it looks like a 9. So you're considering contrasting points of views also, and then making some kind of claim. Okay. So always these claims needs to be supported. What do you support claims with? Maybe research, that is any kind of research, eyewitness testimonies, or quantitative data, qualitative data, all kinds of information, or any studies that were conducted earlier, experts studies in the field, other kinds of textual evidence. Then and you combine your reasoning also, right? Okay, so far we looked at facts, claims, and opinions. Now let's look at let's draw the fine lines between these things. Is a fact a claim by itself?
No.
Yes, because claims are finally you're adding some input of your own, right? You're combining facts in a certain way, we can say, right?
Yeah.
So, and the fact need not be proven. It's just there. It cannot be wrong. A fact is 100% objective. And a claim needs to be corroborated using evidence, right? And it isn't an opinion either because an opinion is quite subjective, right? And when you say something is your opinion, it's generally a feeling. It's not based on reasoning, right? Okay. So, if it is supported, you are well supporting it with the evidence, you can call it a claim. Now, evidence by itself is not a claim either. That's why I said a fact isn't a claim. It can be an observation that you add to support your claim. A description also cannot be a claim. Okay. Now, whenever there is a claim, you're saying that there is some phenomenon you're observing, and you're making some conclusion based on it. For that, you provide some evidence. So, evidence tells you what makes you say this statement, give this particular statement, right? So, that would be your evidence. And then you have to reason out also. So, the link with these three elements might be present in a piece of writing, but the relationship can be flawed as well, right? Also, generally, attention is given to the other side of the issue as well. Now, even though all the four elements are present, sometimes these may not be linked together properly. There may be flaws here and there that you wouldn't even notice. In a question that you're given, maybe you will be given the claim and the evidence and asked to come up with the flaw of it. Or you have to think of correct evidence for the claim. You are given the claim and the reasoning as well, but then the evidence is missing and you have to pick it out from the options. So you should pick out the apt piece of evidence, right? And okay, evidence can do two things. It can either support a claim, or what else can it do? Hello.
Not supported.
Yes, it can weaken it, right? It can support the claim, weaken the claim, or not be relevant to the claim, right?
Yeah.
Or it can partially do any of these things. These nuances need to be kept in mind as you answer the questions. Now, facts. So we saw that facts support claims, right? They can be evidence, but claims cannot support facts. You cannot support an observation making some claim that is not proven. Okay, you need sufficient evidence. The claim cannot be too generalized. It should be so. If you have evidence for, say, you have this phenomenon you're explaining. Okay, and then you have evidence for this much. You cannot generalize it to talk about this as well. That would be a generalization. Or you have some evidence that is huge. You cannot use that to talk about something too specific and narrow, and so you don't. It's too minute. Take this as merely a dot here. So some observation that is too vague cannot be applied to it, right? So that is also a consideration you need to keep when you speak of it. Okay, and the reasoning has to be logical. And a claim by itself is not your argument. How you prove your claim is your overall argument. So the claim, along with your reasoning plus evidence, everything will together constitute the argument. Whenever you say, it will be like this: there is a statement, and then you have to answer the why behind that statement, right? The floods in my city are caused due to poor drainage, and I give some such statistics or some information, and I link the facts together. That will be an argument, and that argument has to be weighed. You should check claims. What evidence is given? Is the evidence sufficient? Is the reasoning logical? What else should I check? Any idea? Something beginning with A.
The assumptions.
Assumptions, right? An assumption is something you take to be true without using any evidence, right? Such things also reasonable. And your statements cannot be too absolute or extreme, right? So you have, something is partially correct. You cannot just say that it's the only reason, it's the worst thing that happened here. Such things, such statements you need to be wary of. Suppose you have a literary text and the author seems to be slightly irritated with something. You cannot say that the author hates this character, right? So that would be too strong a statement, too strong a word. So you should be careful of such things. And also, since you have these options and things, make sure that whatever you pick, the evidence you pick is 100%, it supports the claim. Or you have to make a research, you have to figure out a research outcome, make sure that it's supported by what is given to you. Okay. And everything has to be objective and not subjective. So your outside knowledge would not make have a bearing on this. Now, let's move on to a few research terms. Okay. So research is a systematic study of investigation, either to extend some existing knowledge or to discover something new. Now, take this term fact. So we saw that a fact is something that is verified, it's observed or measured. So here, Newton observing that the apple fell from the tree would be a fact. It's an observation per se. Okay. So the fact would be that the apple falls down from the tree, right? And Newton, the scientist, is observing this. But then there's something else that happens. There's a question that is raised, right? So, is the apple the only thing that falls down? No. There are the trees stay onto the locked onto the earth's surface, and there are a lot of things. Whenever you throw something up, it falls down. So, why does that happen? Right? That could be a research question. Okay, I'm oversimplifying Newton's experiment here. I know that, but this is just for your understanding. So, it's a question that the researcher aims to answer. Why does this happen? In Newton's case, he also wondered why then the moon would orbit there. Why does it stay on its orbit? Because of the gravitational pull. But then it doesn't enter the Earth's surface either, right? So it doesn't go away. It doesn't enter Earth's surface either. It just maintains its orbit. So what would be the force that is responsible for this? Right. So there's a research question that is given, and suppose there's some kind of supposition or proposed explanation. Okay, this could be the reason. So that would be a hypothesis. It's not yet proved, but it's just a starting point. You think that okay, this could be the reason, and you use whatever evidence you have as a to start based on that hypothesis. But then you have to carry on further experiments or collect data, make evaluations, etc. Now, once you have your observations and the research question and probably the hypothesis, there are different research methodologies that you can adapt, right? There are specific procedures or techniques, and it depends. For certain studies, you would need quantitative data. So, what is the difference between quantitative and qualitative data? Quality, from the word itself, you know that it's not something quantified, right? It's more dependent on quality. So, here it's the data is more verbal, it can be subjective, it's based on human experience. The studies are more exploratory. If you take a research undertaken within the humanities or literature, history, etc., these would be exploratory in nature. Whereas research undertaken with a quantitative intent in mind, so those would be dependent on data that can be measured and verified, statistics and surveys, things that can be quantified and organized well. And all these would be more objective because you have the numbers out there. Okay. And quantitative research would be more structured in general. That is, the data would be structured, whereas qualitative data is either semi-organized or, and whenever it's organized, it's not like these quantitative depictions, right? It's mostly based on shared characteristics, or it depends on your study. Also, it's more subjective. Depends on depending on the purpose of your study, you'll be organizing your data, right? So you'll be collecting data, choosing the apt methodology. There are specific procedures you follow to link what you observe, your research question, your proposed explanation that you started with, along with these things to come up with something called the research outcome, right? So whatever is comes as the result of your research is your research outcome. It's either something you can do, some action you can carry on, maybe something to stop the floods from happening again, right? In the example I gave, or to make something, or to solve some issue. All these things would be your research outcomes. And in Newton's case, finally, one of the research outcomes was this theory, right? That the apple, and it explained that the apple fell onto the earth because of gravity, and that was the same reason why the moon would stay in its orbit, right? So these are research outcomes, but note that theories are different from facts. They are explanations of the facts. So when you have some observation, you try to explain it. That could also be an objective of research. Okay, are these terms clear to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you think of all the terms that we discussed today? Let's just try to brainstorm.
Fact.
Fact. And
Claim.
if you had to describe that in one word, you'll say it's verifiable or objective, right?
Yeah.
What else?
Claim.
Claim. Is the claim similar to a fact?
No. You can use a fact to
Hmm.
back up a claim.
Very good. So claims need to be backed up, right?
Yeah.
That is something we learned.
Opinion.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, qualitative and quantitative.
Qualitative. A graph would be
Um,
quantity or quality. Do we have something quantified there in a graph?
yeah.
So it would be quantitative, right?
Mm.
Anything else?
Um,
Plain fact opinion. This would be, and these constitute data or evidence.
yeah.
So, what do I mean when I say a claim is true?
Um, it's a fact.
It's not a fact, right?
Uh,
You can still not say it's a fact. A fact is something that you can it's just verifiable and true at its face value, right? It's not. So, when you claim, you're making a claim, linking the facts together in some way, right?
yeah.
So, you know that there are floods in the city, you know that there's a poor drainage system, and you link the two things together, right? So there's some
Mm.
that's the same case in the case of a theory. And that is also linking or explaining facts in a certain way, though differently than a claim, right? So when you say a claim is true, if you say that it's supported, right? You're
Yeah.
giving some evidence also. So it's supported, and you can say that it's correct according to that particular context. Within that, but you should always qualify it. You cannot say it's true for all the time, right? In that
Yeah.
specific situation, considering the evidence given, yes. Right? Terms under
Um,
research, I think you can remember.
yeah.
Hmm. What do you call some supposition that you start with? Some explanation that you came up with in the beginning, but you need to conduct further study to establish an outcome with that or to establish that particular hypothesis. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
hypothesis. Sorry. Yes. All right. There's also something called a thesis statement. It's somewhat like a claim in a way. You say that this is the reason for this, or you come with some proposition, but then also you have to prove that using a research. Okay. But this is more of a question, whereas this is more you're more sure of it in a way, and it's a thesis statement.
Yeah.
This is your explanation for it. Okay, and this is something you're starting with. That's the only difference. But still, you would need to conduct proper study and come with evidence for both these things. Anything else?
Observations.
When you have observations, you also have, like in your lab,
Sorry.
like you have in
Yeah.
your labs, yes. Observations, conclusions, evidence, quantitative and qualitative evidence, all those things. And you have outcomes also, right? In the end. So conclusions or outcomes. So suppose I give you the purpose of my research or my hypothesis, okay? And I give you my observations or all the data I have gathered, and I ask you to make a reasonable prediction of the outcome that would support my hypothesis. What would you need to do? You know the hypothesis, you have the evidence, so you should find out which outcome would be consistent with these things, right?
Yeah.
So such questions you can expect in your essay reading section. Let's look at the section itself now. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Can you view my presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go into the reading question types under ICT Digital. Within the reading and writing section, there are four major topics. Those are information and ideas, craft and structure, expression of ideas, and standard English conventions. If you look at these four topics, standard English conventions, from the term itself, you can understand that it's something referring to rules or conventions that you follow. So these are would be your grammar topics mainly. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, some stylistic aspects like parallel structures, logical comparisons, etc. Expression of ideas is about expressing ideas in the best way possible. Mostly, it would be editing questions, making revisions to the text, and things like that. These two would go together. We'll club them both under the writing and language section. And we are classifying these two domains, that is information and ideas and craft and structure, under reading, because these are mostly dependent on passages. So now all that we discussed would come under the information and ideas topic, because you are primarily dealing with information and how you can make conclusions or inferences based on that, right?
Yeah.
So the first question type we are looking at would be command of evidence, and that is textual evidence. So these would be more like a qualitative kind of studies, a qualitative kind of arguments. Okay. So mostly they would introduce a claim about a subject and ask you to identify the evidence that strongly supports the claim or weakens the claim. Okay. Anything can be possible. So you have a claim, you understood what a claim is, and then you're given to, options to pick from, that you have to pick the correct evidence that either supports the claim or contradicts the claim according to the question. And these questions can be based on scientific evidence as well as literary evidence. And you need to be extra specific and extra strict when you're dealing with these questions. There is just a thin line between diverse options. It's not easy to identify. More than one option can seem correct, but then they may not answer the question. You should be very clear in understanding the question and the passage first of all before you delve into the options even. Okay. Now, in scientific evidence questions, you will be given a hypothesis. So, what is a hypothesis? It's a supposition or something that you start with. It's a possible explanation, but it has not yet been proved to be correct. And then you can be asked to identify the research outcome for it based on the evidence and other things that are given to you. Especially even for a quantitative data, you can be given such questions. You have the hypothesis, you have a chart or something given. You have to find out the correct research outcome, right? That most aligns with the hypothesis. Shall we try looking at this question? Can you read this out, this passage?
Okay. John Gimser, Robert Slay, and Craig Gimser have hypothesized that the sail-like structure running down the back of the dinosaur Spinosaurus Egyptiasis improved the animal's success in underwater pursuits of prey species capable of making quick, evasive movements. To evaluate their hypothesis, a second claim of researchers constructed two battery-powered mechanical models of S. aegyptiasis, one with a sail and one without, and subjected the models to a series of identical tests in a water-filled tank.
Okay.
Which finding from the model test, if true, would most strongly support Gimsa and colleagues' hypothesis?
Okay. So what all do we have here? We have a hypothesis, right?
Yeah,
What is the hypothesis?
that the sail-like structure improves the animal's success in underwater pursuits.
Okay. How does the sail-like structure improve the animal success?
It's capable of making quick, evasive movements.
Okay, so the sail-like structure is linked to a particular characteristic in these animals, right? They can actually, it's re- it's connected to their movement, and these movements are quite quick, and it's they can because of these quick, swift movements, they are able to excel in underwater pursuits. Okay, so you have a hypothesis. This is something that the scientists have started with, right? And what did they do to evaluate their hypothesis? They performed some kind of experiment, right? They had two models, one with a sail and one without the sail, and they were subjected to identical tests in a water filled tank. And you should find what is the finding, what would that come under? It's a research outcome, right?
Yeah,
So find the research outcome that would align with the hypothesis. So your the outcome that you choose must support the idea that this particular feature in the animal, the sail like structure, helps them make quick evasive movements. Now let's look at the options and you tell me which would be the correct finding here.
D.
Why is D the correct answer and why not A, B, and C?
Because um, D suggests that the sail made it more efficient. It can do a complete short turn in less time.
Okay. Why not A, B, and C? Here
Because they
also.
state
Yes.
all of them say the opposite.
Do they say the opposite necessarily? This one, okay. It says it takes longer to, the ones with the sail took longer to travel the distance, which is quite contradictory, right?
Yeah.
A is contradictory. What about B and C?
Uh, it doesn't talk about um, their movements.
Yes, right. So these are unrelated to the particular hypothesis, right? These
Yeah.
are talking about some other observations in the study, which do not
Mm.
actually relate to the particular hypothesis. But what would happen if you hadn't read this carefully? So here, when you see that, you will see that this is contradictory. But yes, this displays less water. Or with the sail to displays more water, you would say, okay, so it couldn't move faster, right?
Yeah.
It can be confusing at the times, but it doesn't directly. So here, nothing is given about water displacement, right? So you cannot state that it improved the animal's movement, but B might be confusing to somebody. Right? This is not
Yeah.
related at all. So in this way, they'll frame the options such that you more than one option can seem correct at times also. Okay. So make sure you figure out what the hypothesis is, what exactly they're doing, they're talking about. Be very specific. So here we paid attention to the quick evasive movements, right? And we had that cleared in our mind before we looked at the options. So always look at the passage first, then you can look at the options. Don't go back and forth in the beginning itself because that will influence how you read the passage, right? If you look at the options.
Yeah.
Now, coming to literary evidence, here there would be an argument concerning a literary work. Okay, and so arguments would be claims that is supported by reasons and evidence. Right? So we discussed this, like what a fact is, what a claim is, and what an opinion is. So what you would need to do is you should choose an option that is suitable to the argument that is given. So and what would serve as a direct evidence for the argument that is given in the passage. Let's look at an example. Can you read this?
Mr. Cornelius Johnson, Office Seeker, is a short story written in 1900 by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. In the story, the narrator describes Mr. Cornelius Johnson's appearance as conveying his exaggerated sense of importance.
Okay.
Which quotation from Mr. Cornelius Johnson, Office Seeker, most effectively illustrates the claim?
Okay. You want to try this out on your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
B.
B.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is B correct?
Um,
Okay. What are we looking for here?
his
What are we
appear
given and what are we looking for?
his appearance and how it shows his exaggerated sense of importance.
So you talk. The narrator says that this person's the narrator describes a particular character in such a way that the appearance of the character conveys his sense of importance, and that is not just a sense of importance; it's quite exaggerated a sense of importance. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here, can you say that so what is given here? This person, the Grey Prince Albert. So he saw him as some kind of prince, apparently, was scrupulously buttoned about his form, and a shiny top hat replaced the felt of the afternoon. Okay. So you know that this person is well dressed, right?
Yeah.
But then, do you know that he thinks too much of himself? How do you know that? Does this support the claim? Like when you read the claim and you read this, it does seem related, right? It goes well with the claim that is given here, but does it adequately support it?
No.
No. Okay. Here, maybe yes, this is the narrator's view, right? The narrator views his character as the Grey Prince Albert. So you're saying
Yeah.
that, and he was then you are given details about his dressing, right? It's quite impressive, let us say, and it's quite meticulous. I can say that he's scrupulously buttoned about his form and he's very careful about his dressing. It's quite extravagant, also, right? Okay, let's
Yeah.
keep this aside, like if you are doubtful, and let's look at the other options also. Okay. He carried himself always as if he were passing under his own triumphal arch. Would this be effectively illustrating the claim? What do you think?
Yeah.
Why?
Because as if he was passing under his own triumphal arch, so that shows his sense of
Importance.
importance for himself.
So this character himself thinks that he is quite important. It's not
Yeah.
quite important, he's very important. That's how he thinks of himself. And that is evident here. And appearance also, right? That's because how he appears as he walks, his gait maybe, or the way he carries himself conveys this idea that he's so obsessed with himself, his own importance. Right?
Yeah.
So this might be more effective than option B, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's look at option C. Mr. Cornelia Johnson always spoke in a large and important tone. Oh, okay. So this character always spoke in an important tone. Why can't this be option C then?
Because it doesn't have to do with his appearance.
Very good. And what about option D then?
Um, it doesn't talk about his importance also.
And it's mostly about the setting, the climate, all those things, right? Rather
Yeah.
than this particular character. There is an event that is described. That is, he came down from his train, and he was well dressed, but you don't have anything about his self importance or even his appearance. That much is not given to you. So you would be probably confused between A and B only when you answer this question. So here
Yeah.
it's very easy to go with option B. But make sure, if you are in doubt, make sure you go back to the question and understand exactly what you're looking for. And this would be evidence that you're using from the text to uh, support this claim, right? So it should be 100% effective. What would be more effective? It would be option A.
Yeah.
Use the elimination strategy always. Even if you think the answer is very obvious, make sure you can rule out the other options, at least in your mind. Okay. Now, we'll look at command of evidence quantitative. So far, we looked at textual evidence. Under textual evidence, we looked at both scientific and literary evidence. If it is quantitative, you'll have some graphs or tables that add more information to the passages. Then, so totally, you're given some context, right? It's not a passage as per se. Maybe it's very short also. And this context is given, and then you're given the table. So you have to complete a sentence by using the data given from the table or graph. Here it's very important to understand the argument. That is what you're looking for. Okay. And then read the data because sometimes certain options may be correct according to the graph. Okay. But they may not support the argument. They may be irrelevant. They may be weakening the argument, or they may not be sufficient to establish the particular point made in the argument. It can be too specific, too generic, anything of the sort. Or it can convey, suppose you have to show a difference between two quantities, two entities. But you're picking values that are closely, rel- quite close to each other. You're not showing the difference enough, right? So it's not sufficient to prove the argument, right? So make sure you understand the argument and what you're looking for before you read the data and then evaluate the choices. Okay, so here, so if there is a false statement among the choices, then probably it would imply that the other choices, except the one that is correct, would be false too. So make sure you check whether the data is correct according to the graph. So what you can do is read the paragraph, understand the argument, skim the graph, and then look through it again and validate the choices. Again, you will be using tactic of elimination. So, what are some possible errors? Sometimes you may be incorrectly interpreting data or interpreting the wrong piece of data. So you need to pick data from a certain area in the graph, but you're picking it from elsewhere. Okay. So those wouldn't be appropriate. Sometimes the data you pick might be contradictory. It might be incorrect according to the graph or not supporting the passage. There might be some trend, but it's interpreted in the reverse way. But suddenly when you read it, you catch the words and you think it's correct. Okay, so just be careful. And also, the options can go beyond the graph or beyond the passage or both. That is, they may stretch something that is given there and generalize that particular trend. So you cannot call that option, right? So in such cases, you should be careful. So one is interpreting the wrong piece of data, uh, interpreting something in reverse, and those would mostly use similar words as given in the passage or graph, or using irrelevant information, or making generic, unsupported claims. Let's look at an example. Can you read this?
The share of the world's population living in cities has increased dramatically since 1970, but this change has not been uniform. France and Japan, for example, were already heavily urbanized in 1970, with 70% or more of the population living in cities. The main contributors to the world's urbanization since 1970 have been countries like Algeria, whose population went from
Okay, so you need to complete the assertion. So
yeah,
what data would be appropriate to complete this?
um, Algeria's graph.
So you need to pick this and look at the change, right? So you just have
Yeah,
to show the numbers, right? It's
yeah,
40, close 40 and just above 70. Here it's quite straightforward. Hmm. 40 in 972, more than 70% in 2020. So in
yeah.
this case, the question is pretty straightforward. The other options do not seem that confusing. It can be this simple, or there can be more complex questions. Can you try solving this question? Okay, this is not a quantitative evidence question. Okay, this is a qualitative evidence question. We'll have some jumble questions now. But this is quite a complex question.
B,
B or D?
B for boy.
Okay. So what is the claim, and why do you say B is the claim that would? So sorry, the evidence that would, or the result that would weaken the claim.
The claim is that the Neanderthals could count. they made the markings as a means of counting something.
So they're saying that the nine notches that were made, the parallel notches, were used for counting purposes, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but they said uh, the claim was backed up by saying that
Wouldn't
okay.
so aren't you looking for something that would weaken the claim?
Sorry, I read it wrong. I thought it said the notches were evenly spaced in the text. Oh, then it's D.
Density, right? So here it's approximately parallel notches. So these were
Yeah.
present on another site as well. That would be quite supporting this claim, right? We
Yeah.
have parallel notches made. Again, it's found at another site, so you can generalize the trend. You can have add more data, right? So that would only support the claim.
Yeah.
Here, the point, why not A and C also? Can you rule them out?
Um, because A supports it.
Hmm?
A supports the claim.
And a common feature in modern humans' early systems. Okay, right. No problem. It supports it. Then
Um, it's not very relevant. C.
you can say that it's supporting in a way, right? Because if
Yeah.
something takes careful effort to do, right, you need to put in that effort to make those evenly spaced lines. So though that action would have been done with a purpose in mind. So we
Yeah.
can say that it could have been used for counting.
Mm.
This supports the claim. The other options also seem to be supporting. But when you're saying that it was used for decoration purposes, you are directly weakening the claim, right?
Yeah.
They're saying, all right, this takes effort to do. They are unevenly spaced, parallel lines, but the purpose is not what you say, it's decorative art. So this could be the one we can settle.
Yeah.
So here, just because you read this word, you didn't pay attention here. You thought it might be supporting, right?
No, I read the passage wrongly. I thought it was
Okay.
evenly spaced.
Okay, all right. So be careful of everything. So everything counts. Passage.
Yeah.
Some words in the passage even. It might be in the specifics that you go wrong also. That's why we are saying always pay attention to the specific points and don't compromise at all when you choose an option. It has
Yeah.
to be perfect.